So one of the coolest domains that we're going to get into is the software development domain. And specifically getting into seeing how we can enforce controls using software development. So interestingly enough, there is a cyclic approach, the SDLC, that many of you have probably heard of before. But if not, we'll go through that and talk a little bit about that. Getting into setting up your development environment. If anybody has ever developed it before, you may have heard of an IDE or an integrated development environment. And typically, what that is that gives you a chance to have locally a window, a single pane of glass that you can go through and develop a project in. And I'll show you an example of that here in a few minutes. Another thing is coming up and figuring out what the impact of delivering some pretty lame software could be. So if you're like most businesses out there, or I guess your company's like most businesses out there, this is probably the trend that you typically will see. And I've made a lot of money working in or around Microsoft products before. So we love to hate them or hate to love them or whatever that love-hate relationship is. But if you just take a look at it, what's the usual trend of the software as it comes to market? People usually have some sort of gap. They see a gap. And then from that gap, somebody tries to innovate or create and tries to beat the rest of the market to delivery. So tries to put it into production. And usually when they do that, they release buggy software. I know when I was at NASA, we used to have an approach that said, hey, if it's 80% done, then let's go ahead and put that into production, and then we'll let the users tell us the other 20%. And whether or not you agree with that, well, there's certain situations where you may not want to do that, especially if things lift off the ground or you're launching things. You may not want to do that, but for software where life is not in question, you could vet it through just attrition of the users that are out there. Immediately, you probably will see some sort of trouble tickets coming in or change requests, people telling you how much your software sucks, or hey, we found this right here, here's a screenshot. So keep that in mind. But check it out here. It starts off at number 1, where we try to beat people to the market. Gets down here to number 2, and hackers are looking constantly at this software to try to find issues with it. Are there maintenance hooks in there? Are there backdoors? Are there vulnerabilities? Was it built on a Windows platform? Was it built on a Linux platform? Based off of just some simple things, we can very quickly enumerate whether or not we can try different exploits to see if we can get some sort of administrative privilege on the system. And after we do that, then we can post them out for the community to share. So I think about this model on the overhead here, and this is very similar to the Patch Tuesdays that we see with Microsoft. You could also probably equate this to the IAVA process in the DoD, because this is typically with some sort of frequency. You're going to release, issues are going to come up, you're going to squash the bugs, and then you're going to patch. You're going to release, squash the bugs, and patch. And that's really what it comes down to, is how quickly can you get it out to the field? Do you have your environment stood up in a way that allows you to have a local environment, maybe a development environment, a test environment, staging environment, a production environment? And if not, then how robust is your development environment? So keep that in mind as you're looking at the various trends with software security whenever we get into talking about the releases to the marketplace.